Okay, so I will get started because we only have a limited amount of time today and we've got a ton of questions to get through. So I'm going to pass it over to you guys. If you can walk me through, just kind of introduce yourself, your background, and then what got you to where you are today. I'm going to go on mute and chat with Tiana and try to get her in here as well. So Raz, you want to kick it off and give a little intro?
Yes, no.
All right, fantastic. How's that? All right, I'm Raz Carcoana. Been a product manager for 20 years now. I love designing software ever since I first did it. As transitioned from doing support right after college during the startup boom in 2000. Doing technical support was not my thing, but I really loved understanding the business and understanding how our users interact with our digital products, and I just dove headfirst into product before it actually had a structure and a discipline to it. And I've really enjoyed it, watching it evolve over the last couple of decades into its own discipline.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So I'm Dalia Vazquez. I've been a product manager for about 20 plus years. Started out in the Navy. The Navy kind of told me I was an IT business analyst and project manager. So that was very straightforward. I am very blessed to have that opportunity. And I was writing requirements from the time I was 19. So right off the bat, my first job was in a fintech, and I've kind of gone ins and out into entertainment, travel, retail, but fintech is it. Blockchain and all the newer stuff now going into financial market analysis with the apes in the social life and the GME fiasco of the trading in the past few years. So that's where I'm at right now. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thanks for the intros. So as we kind of look back on your careers to date and the different types of companies that you've worked in, different size orgs, different industries, how has the role and the expectation of product management changed or evolved? Raz, you want to kick us off?
That's a great question. Yeah, so it's interesting. When I first started, it was sort of an offshoot of project management. There was a lot of parallels with project management as a discipline. However, project management didn't always answer the kinds of questions that business needed answered or that engineering needed answered, and there had to be somebody in there to connect those dots. One executive leader I worked with called it the connective tissue that brings the bones and the muscles together, to use a high school biology metaphor. And that's really kind of where product seems to have its really sweet spot, right? It's those pieces that need to be connected to make the right decisions throughout an organization. So I've seen it evolve from project management, but now it's got these wonderful offshoots of product managers with a focus on data, right? Product management with a focus on operations, right? That's a new focus area. And then with additional verticals and disciplines, right? You take product management, you apply it to a specific industry, and you get these really subgenres of product that are really unique and interesting and combine skill sets that aren't necessarily taught traditionally. And so I'll say that some of the skill sets that I've seen really take off in product center around like the liberal arts disciplines, right? The ability to mingle and mix different thought areas into creative new solutions. And I think that's what product managers are largely counted on for, to do that think work for the organization. Yeah.
I think to piggyback on your perspective and your experience, yeah, project management definitely was kind of it. Back then, for me, we were more of a waterfall fintech company. And I mean, nobody truly knew there was a product manager, right? Back then, to us, product manager was more somebody dealing with like a manufacturing company and they owned a tangible product. software wasn't truly a thing yet where there was any certification. A lot of people didn't even have unlimited internet. Computers were very expensive too. So as I grew, from my perspective, there was the concept of the IT business analyst, and I think the military had a lot to do with it. And as I grew, right, that IT business analyst would work with like marketing e-specialists, right? They threw that E right at the beginning when commerce became this e-commerce, right? And the eBays of the world, which Tiana was here because she could talk so much about, you know, the growth from her eBay experience. But it truly was waterfall. I think my first experience with Agile was mostly on FedEx. They were doing something more fragile. They were starting off, you know, the idea and the concept that you needed to have a requirements document, work with a UX agency, right, into wireframes. Back then they were chicken scratches. We didn't have the tools for prototyping we have today. It was like, here's a PowerPoint with a PDF kind of looking thing with some screens, right? It wasn't a Figma or an Adobe XD. And then I saw it grow. Like there was a need. You know, Mike Kahn came out and said, hey, we got to standardize something here. I think I got something good going, right, from the 80s. So I'm going to go try it out and tried out this certification. I was one of the first down in the Austin, you know, class, and we were very few, but that was like the first product ownership kind of certification that was out there. The concept of Scrum was introduced. Then it was Scrum versus Kanban, but I still want to plan everything out ahead as a waterfall. And I've seen it evolve. Like you go into a product management certification from it, for example, but they're still using Mike Cohn's kind of preamble into agile story writing, into, you know, there's so much in the growth of being a product manager. To Raz's point, it goes into now product ops, but there is program manager. There is still an IT project manager that is needed. There is still the business analyst, system analyst, tech product manager. There's so many variances right now into being a product that, you know, talking with Amazon, it's like, okay, they got like 5 different roles in product management, and each one has a very unique and very specific role that if you have been in the industry, you can tell it apart. But if you're new to it, it's kind of hard, and it can get very confusing.
And that probably changes a lot based on the company size as well. So if you're at an earlier stage, it's kind of product manager team of 1 that wears every single hat versus that's where I was going to go next. Right?
Yeah, and there's that not so identifiable line between product management and product design. Like I have peers who've been product designers for 20 years, and the question was, at what point did you realize that you were a product designer? You know what I'm saying? And we can't separate the design from the functional requirement, and you can't separate the entire product from it. So there's still this blurriness between these two roles, right? And it's really hard. And to your point, depending on the size of the company, is where you say, okay, who takes on what? And do you go together and gather feedback? Do you humble yourself enough that you can trust that your partner can gather all of that information and you can come together and still own together the process? There's so much space to grow in there.
Yeah, I think company size is it's a really key element, especially as you try to grow your career and develop your skills. And precisely targeting the right size, I think, is incredibly meaningful. Of course, the smaller the organization, the more you're going to do and the more you're going to be exposed to different things. But in larger organizations, you're going to find frustrations where you feel like this is an area you can contribute in, but obviously there's a delineation there. You have to obey within the structure of the organization. You have to hand off that work. And so knowing what you're looking for is also incredibly important. I've worked my way up the ladder from small to large and then back down from large to small. And I've experienced it sort of in these different ways. And yeah, for my preference, I like the smaller organizations with a little bit more ambiguity and a little bit more hats, just because there's a lot more growth there and a lot of opportunities to be tactical, and impactful. There you go. And that is fun. That's the fun part for me. I'm a builder, and I enjoy building and putting things in people's hands to use and making an impact in their lives. And to see that cycle go directly, really quickly, is really fulfilling. I think as a product person, there's a little bit of builder in everyone. Am I right? Is that a full question we can ask?
Do you see the expectations of a product manager in terms of what those KPIs and goals and success criteria are at a startup versus a big company? How are those different?
I would say that in a smaller organization, the KPIs and the OKRs you're targeting are nascent, right? In nature, you're just starting out, you're just starting to build, and so you're really setting the anchors and the foundations for how you're going to look and measure your business over time. And so not only do you have a lot of influence there, you also do a lot of trial and error. In larger organizations, I'd like to think, and in my experience, it's fairly true that these metrics have already been established and the organization's matured. And your role there is less definition and more depth, right? Creating depth and understanding at what drives each OKR and adding data to that and finding ways to move the needle there. And so, yeah, the challenges are certainly different in those two kind of environments.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it depends, because I have been in large organizations like in Omnitrax where, I was the one who was assigned with this product suite, right? Or product line. And from there, I discovered, there's a whole need for a gigantic, re-architecture on the platform. And there's so much more that we could do. And at that point, we had a team that became kind of like on startup mode. And our KPIs were very different from what the existing company was, even though it was a 40-year-old company. Now, me working in startups, which that's been my role, to his point, yes, there is a lot more flexibility. At the same time, it truly depends on the leadership of the company. It also depends on the experience of its founders. I have found founders that, what is a product or a company? You found a gap in the market, and you happen to be the first one to put the money into it, or you're running along with other people who have found the same gap and either have the resources or the capacity to go run after it. Because I'm pretty sure many of us have had ideas and found gaps, but either you weren't in the position or you didn't have the resources to run after it, right? So you're like, somebody else will beat me to it, right? How many of us would have had an Uber, right? Or a Twitter or something like it. But the reality is some of these people who come up with ideas may actually come from a completely different field. I've worked with people who are from the legal fields, creating technological companies, and their KPIs are very different from somebody who's had 30, 40 years in financial investments and is a stakeholder, right? So I think it would vary. Us as product managers, we're kind of it. We're kind of holding, as like mini CEOs, as they call us, the ground on helping them define what are the KPIs we should be looking for and how do we model our product? What do we think should be the right metrics when you're releasing it? And I think there's always opportunity to grow, even like I said in my example with a 40-year-old company.
Oh yeah, those are probably the best ones to innovate at, right?
Oh my gosh, that is like the Christmas present, like right in summer. It's like, what? I get to work on a brand new project in this 40-year-old company? Are you kidding me? That's an opportunity of a lifetime. You
have to have a little bit of rebel inside of you, right? To challenge convention and be an thinker. Right? That's what product
being called passionate, right? Or bold, or it's part of it. It comes with a job, right?
Yeah, I think that's one of my favorite parts is having the bandwidth to, and it's actually in my job description, which is great. Like your job is to challenge conventional wisdom, Raz, right? Like that's what it's incredible. I love that part. I love that part of it. What comes with it is the frustration of encountering all the traditional aspects of whatever industry you're in, and then trying to change the direction of that, right? Change the trajectory of it. And it's oftentimes because it's a large industry. Financial services obviously is a big one. There's a lot of industries out there like that really desperately need change and evolution. It's like turning an aircraft carrier, right? It's going to take a long time. It's going to be a big arc, right? But yeah, being a force behind that is really exciting, you know.
We had a question come in from Lizeth, which touches on what we've kind of danced around KPIs. So she asked, can you talk about setting KPIs and OKRs before finding product market fit?
Ooh.
You want to take on that one, or do you want me, Raz?
You can start.
A fun one.
It's a little bit of a tricky one.
All right. So it depends. Before I find my marketplace, I actually like to do a POC still. I got to have some sort of feedback from somewhere. One of the best examples that I've found so far was this idea creator, the founder of one of the companies that I'm working with right now. He actually started out the company by feedback. He had a fan, followers in Twitter. He expressed his concern and opinion about a topic, and everybody went boom. Oh my gosh, somebody has to do something about it. Somebody has to create. I wish it had blah, 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 blah. And that entire trail, right, of this Twitter followers created the company that we're working with right now. And a lot of them even became investors for the company, which is immensely like a turnover around Wall Street, because this isn't common. This isn't the normal, let me go get investors. No, it was already funded out of a social media tweet. So you already have growth in there. You already have expectations. You already come with a suite of features. The problem is, how do you identify how to define a KPI if you don't even know which persona you're going to focus on? See, we tend to make the mistake a little bit and say, these are the KPIs that I'm going to use standard. I want to grow new people. Okay, you have new customer growth and you have people coming in, but what's going to happen if the majority of the people you're bringing on board are freemium people, right? A lot of product managers are not thinking that not everybody wants to pay a standard package for something. And then we have to break away from like packaging a product as a monolith, rather than saying I can create features and add-ons that I can add on to a service, something that some people would pay for. And now my KPIs look very different from the bubble KPIs. And that goes with, you know, how do we move into the future? You got to move into the future by thinking that maybe you also introduce crypto payment methods, right? And if you do that, you have a niche, and now you have different KPIs set from those that are the standards. I'm going to offer standard method of payments for my product, and those are freemium. And if they want to enable this, they get this package for a month. And now you define your KPIs very differently.
Yeah, I was thinking it's kind of a chicken and egg problem to some extent. It'd be fun to start with some key metrics that you want to impact, and then back into some kind of product that can do that. I think that's an interesting intellectual exercise, and it may have some practical applications for sure. I would say though, most importantly, KPIs and OKRs are something that ought to be flexible as well, right? As the business evolves, as you learn more about your users and their preferences, and I think you may have touched on this already, Dalia. Your KPIs have to keep up with it. So the conversation about, is this the right thing to measure now that we've evolved to this next level, right? Is that the right thing to measure now? Are those the right indicators to follow? And of course, as a company grows, from seed to series to IPO, right? Like those indicators can and must change as you go along, right? Because you're proving different things at every stage of growth. As you, right? Like at the seed round, you're not trying to scale. Right?
Exactly.
And
you haven't even penetrated the market yet.
Right. So I kind of see them as like two planets having gravitational force on each other, bobbing back and forth and influencing one another. Is this the right product? Is this the right way to measure the product? We've evolved. the product has changed. Are these the right metrics? You know, kind of back and forth. And I think that's one of the key roles of product folks is to drive those conversations within the organization to evolve, right? Organizations inherently want to be static because there's structure and there's predictability in that. And that's what business looks for. Nobody would want to invest in an unstable business, right? And so there's this sort of bias towards stability and towards staying. And product is there to keep nudging and keep pushing, keep evolving the organization. And those are some of our tools, right? The product, the metrics, the data that supports it, and then keep having those conversations to make those changes and evolve the organization.
Yeah, I think just to give them at least something, right? Some of the things that I use, because I was having this conversation not long ago, I'd say like maybe even a day ago, where first of all, you have to identify, are you penetrating the market? Is this product like something that it's already out there and has a lot of competitors in it? Because that changes your metrics by a ton. Mm-hmm. If you do have a lot of solid competitors out there, you have to be able to offer something that can distinguish you. Now, it doesn't mean you have to wait until you have that full feature parity set to be able to penetrate the market. You can actually have, like I was mentioning, that niche of people who believe in you, believe in your product, believe in your company, you know, and they're like, I can see where this is going. I can see the value, right? And then you can start using metrics that are on your base product, right? So you have to split your product in your value prop and identify within my product or suite of products, which ones are the ones that are the revenue driving, right? So that you can focus on revenue producing activities as if you were making investments, you know, in your portfolio. But that's how you go. You go with revenue producing activities. And then you say, okay, if these are the revenue producing activities, I can release them into the market, have my alpha and beta users, and I'm going to be tracking how many people are truly hitting the tools that I think are going to make me money, even though they're free, right? Because one of your metrics would be actually having subscribers that you're retaining over long term. To Raz's point, it's going to change. You're always going to have to change your metrics, but you've got to start with that data. You got to start looking, are people truly hitting it? And if they're hitting it, are they actually staying and being proactive about it? Is it taking them long? Do I have many complaints? From my perspective in a brand new product, I look for that. You know, if I have too much feedback on, yes, this is good, but if I see that, but that's definitely a clear metric to me that there's something wrong with that product and I have to work on it a little better. And if people are coming, but not quite playing with it or coming back during the day, I definitely know that I need to enhance. And that's how you start growing your metrics until you get to the point where you are there and people are paying for it. And if you're increasing the price on it, you're also watching out, are my subscribers leaving? Are they referring, right? So there's so much involved in metrics, but at least that's where I can start from a high level to give you a little bit, because we could have a whole class about it.
Yeah.
And it has seemed to be a theme of today, especially coming off of Melissa's session around being more outcome focused and outcome driven. So it sounds like you both have a good grasp on how to make decisions based on data, how to run an outcome driven product plan and organization. So did you have a kind of shift from being a feature factory, as some people call it, to being an outcome driven company? Or was that a kind of deliberate thing that happened, or just an evolution of your time as a product manager?
I can talk so you
want to go. You want to go, Dalia? I can go. That's fine. So it's a little bit of both. Again, it's the dialogue, right? You have this, you know, when you're small, you have this valuable nut, right? That now has marketability, and you want to sell it, and you know, you're getting feedback because you're listening to your users. You're getting, oh, you should do this with it, and you should do that with it, and then you have this tendency and this lure to become a feature factory, and you become a feature factory for a while, right? And you're like, oh, let's pack in this value and that value. We can increase our price and have different packages. You can do that. But then you fall into this feature factory mindset. And then at that point, you have to now push and bias towards data-driven feature development. You say, okay, now we have all this stuff out there. What's actually valuable? What is it teaching us about our users?
Yeah.
Right? Like, did we launch 10 different features, but only like 3 of them are really used? is that really what's happening? Let's look under the hood. And so I think that transformation happens, again, 2 planets, gravitational pull, right? As you grow, you get a little bit, you have those conversations again. Are these the right KPIs? Are we growing the right things? You know, whatever. And then you bake in the right feature. Very few, I think, organizations have the luxury to be measuring the right things from the beginning all the time, right? Oftentimes, 2 years into your product evolution, you realize, oh my God, we should, you know, measure this thing 2 years ago. It would have been awesome.
We should know someone's using it.
You didn't think, I mean, it wasn't something you could think about because all products have this sort of organic conversational nature to it and how they evolve. And that's why one of my perspectives and one of my favorite things about product is the fact that we have this role in an organization to have those conversations and constantly nudge and push folks in the right direction to make the right kind of decisions for the product. But yeah, it's definitely organic in nature. And maybe this year you have a conversation with some stakeholders, and next year you have the same conversation, but your stakeholders are different. Folks have moved on, different thinkers have come, new thought work has been done in that area, conferences have been done, people are learning different things, and now that conversation is completely different a year later. Maybe your product hasn't changed, you know, but now people are thinking a little bit differently about it. I think that's valuable too. At the end of the day, I think to be a successful product manager, you have to have some level of passion for the thing you're doing so that you can push yourself to the depths where no one else will want to go, right? And to get into the kinds of details that no one really wants to get into, but that are incredibly critical. And so I'm kind of riffing off topic here, but that part's incredibly important, especially if you're going to be the voice in your organization driving those conversations.
Yeah, to me, it was a little different. I'm going to be very honest. I was so excited that I was doing something outside of, you know, the Navy and being behind 4 gray walls or on a ship that I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. I have something. I didn't care if people were using it or not. I didn't care. You know what I'm saying? I was just excited that I had something, that I had a product, that there was something called software and applications, and that there were, you know, at this time it was corporate, right? The large companies that actually had the ability to have internet that had it. And to me, right, having a bank who's for the first time going from the brick and mortar to actually having something online, it was huge. And as I moved up, right, and moved through different phases, I always had a leadership above, because when you're starting, you always have that senior product manager, or, you know, in my time, the marketing specialist, whoever who's above, who's looking at those metrics, right, and taking the customer service info. Back then, we didn't have analytics like they used to, like we have today. There was no Google. So you have, you know, to speak with your customer service team, with your sales team, to actually know, you know, what's going on with the product, if people are using it or not, and then talk to some DBA guy who could pull, you know, a query to see if users were using it. So when I realized that that could be done, because I kind of got tired of going back and forth to customer service, I was like, there's got to be a spreadsheet. Like, I'm a spreadsheet person. And so I was like, if there is a spreadsheet out there, could one of you guys pull it out? Like, is that a thing that you do? And I remember one of those guys was like, yeah, I can run a JavaScript and do blah, 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 and create this thing for you. And that was my first admin portal. And that was my first time I'm seeing metrics, but I still didn't know what it meant. It was just a list of people. I remember when Google came out the first time, and you're looking at Google Analytics for the first time, and that's all you have. It's a list of people with like weird GUIDs and what the hell's a GUID, right? And now you have people from all over the world, maybe because you couldn't control geolocation. And you're like, but what are they looking at? They got here so that they create an account. And as it evolved, right? I almost would say to anybody, go play with Google Analytics. Stand up something on your own. It ain't expensive. And play with it so that you can start realizing how people start using something no matter what you push. It could be your own portfolio, and you can see metrics, right? And so little by little, when I started becoming more senior and I started seeing the money, and I was like, oh, we got to keep the lights on, right? Oh, I need Dragonboat subscriptions for my roadmap. Oh, I need, you know, all of these other cool tools. We had to start looking at, are we making money? because the stakeholders will come back and say, I don't think that feature is worth it. We're not making enough money for it. And I was like, hold up. If we're not making enough money for it, then how do I account for it? How do I make money out of my own platform? And that started shifting my mindset from I'm having fun with something to, okay, I need to make money out of this, right? So it's been an evolution for me.
Yeah, I love that story. And it's interesting how the Navy and your experience there really shifted and formed your perspective on product management. We've talked a lot about different paths and how people get into their role today. I think you've got a pretty unique one. Not a lot can
I do. I'm not the only one though. I have other people out there who are cryptos, and you know they're starting to come out and like reach out to me, and they're like, hey, I'm in tech as well, or I'm in sales tech, or I'm in this tech, right? Nobody truly realized you could actually continue from a BA and be a product manager. I don't know why. You know, some of them just went into the sales side. Some of them, I guess each person has a different path to follow.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so we've touched on different types of goals, different types of metrics. I want to dig into that a little bit and talk about when there's a million things that you could be doing. How do you prioritize? How do you make those trade-off decisions? And how do you pick the best? It's a big loaded question. If you've solved it, then let's hear it. Raz, I'll kick it off to you first this time.
That is one of the hardest questions, right? That's the frontier of product, right? In any organization is having those philosophical questions about where should we be spending our time and resources, and what's going to have the biggest impact. Because until you do it, you can't measure it, and if you can't measure it, you don't know if it's working or not. And so you have to put your best foot forward. You can be scientific about it. You can synthesize, industry trends and position of the company and you can put it all together. At the end of the day, I think it comes down with stakeholder alignment and getting everybody to execute at the same time, right? What you want is everybody on that page, rather than a lot of, friction and disagreement and whatever. Now, I'm not saying disagreement's bad. I mean, that's a great part of the dialogue. That's what you're going to have before you pick that direction. But once you're there, you gotta roll and you gotta execute, and then you gotta change directions if that's what the evidence tells you, and remain objective to the goal rather than to the original idea. I know that's not terribly helpful, but I'll say this: on a sprint by sprint basis, I do something tactical, I do something strategic, and I do something in between, right? And I like to touch all of those items. In a well-running team, you can touch all those items on a sprintly basis if that's the kind of rhythm that you work at. But if you're not thinking strategically, then all you are is just a tactical assemblage of features and fixes. And if all you're doing is thinking strategically, then you're missing out on the tactical moves that really put you ahead. So I'm strong in figuring that out. At the end of the day, I think if your users are not, your users, your customers, however you define that, if they're not getting value from you on an ongoing basis, then that's something you need to look at, right? Are you spending too much time fixing bugs or something, or like what is it, right? Like give your people value. That's the role, that's the opportunity. And so if you focus on that item as best you can with as imperfect data as you can, you will know pretty quickly if you're wrong, right? Just get it out there, get it in someone's hands, get them to use it. Oh my God, we were wrong about this thing. Pivot, change, go to this other.
Fail fast,
right?
fail fast.
Yeah, there is no one, there's only just the next step, but you also have to have an eye for the horizon. Dalia, I keep with you.
I think
for sure.
So for my I like to give people little nuggets here and there because I wish somebody had done it with me. And so after 20 years, you kind of just wish for things, right? Like that magic wand and the Wonder Woman bracelets. I keep waiting Amazon releases. Maybe I'll go work for them to make them, right? But the idea is if you're a product manager who works at a startup or a very small company, everything is important and everything is a fire. And everybody wants to put pressure on you and say, this is what's most important. I have found that creating a business process modeling notation flow helps. Why? Because I reduce the arguments, I reduce the politics, I reduce the, no, the customer service needs these, but legal saying that this has to happen, and here is the refactoring of fluff. It's all important, right? But if we go from left to right on creating a feature, the picture is very clear. You already know what you need to create and what you don't, no matter how important they say it is. If it's the happy path and you're trying to get to a goal that is going to give you high value, revenue, lower risk, lower compliance, higher customer satisfaction, higher growth rate, put it on a spreadsheet. Like, it's very straightforward. You can put something from 1 to 5 and give it a point and say, this one gives me high value. This one has high risk, has high complexity, blah, blah, blah. You can see it clearly. If you can't see the picture, use the BPMN. If that doesn't work, you're gonna have to teach people a little bit about maybe we need more resources and separate the team to create parallel developments, right? And that's a whole nother conversation. It requires 95% psychology. It truly does. You have to be somebody who can speak the lingo with everybody around you, because all of your teammates from other departments, your stakeholders, they're all going for the same goal. They want the company to succeed, but from their perspective. It's like that picture of all the old men, you know, the elderly touching the different parts of the elephant, and they're all trying to describe it. And the leg, the trunk, everything is important. But the product manager is standing over here like, y'all are touching only one part of the whole picture. Like, I can see it all, right, Raz? So when you got the picture of the whole elephant, you're like, okay, I gotta fit it through this door, and it's too small, right? And they're like, no, but wait, the elephant has the open pasture. It's like, no, 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 there is a fence. I can see the fence. It's too small. We got to move the fence out first, and then you can get the elephant through, right? With the part of the body that you want. And that's how I see product management and product development. I see it as constantly.
Yeah. Dalia, you touched on my favorite part of being a product manager. You talk with so many stakeholders that you have a picture of the company that a lot of folks just don't have. And you see pieces fit that a lot of folks don't see. You know, how they fit. And yeah, and then it's incumbent upon you to tell that story of what you see and show everyone what you see. And a lot of times, you know, once folks start seeing that picture, they start to see how their work fits in differently. But yeah, that view of the company that you get doing product work and touching every single department, I don't know that there's another role that does that in a typical organization, to be honest.
Maybe project management. Possibly.
Maybe.
But I mean, like, when you got, like, let's say you got a company who's got regulations. There you are.
Hi, Tiana.
Sorry, guys. I don't know what happened.
Well, it's good to see you.
Welcome aboard. You want to talk about the elephant in the room? Because that's what we're talking about.
Dalia just painted a beautiful picture of an elephant in the room with some men in suits going like this.
Yes. She was asking the biggest question there is, how do I prioritize my work, right? And it's like, okay, it depends where you're at, because to everybody, the elephant is as important, but they can only see one part of it. Hey, Becky.
Hi, Becky.
Oh, it's a party now.
Like, I did not expect you to be here as a speaker. Look at her face.
I was trying to figure out why I can't hear you guys when you're on, but I'm not on. I cannot hear you for some reason.
It's weird. Anyway, so going back to the priority, 2 methods that I provided. One was using the BPMN if you're in a particular feature and that's all you own. Maybe even doing a high eagle view of the entire picture with like sub processes, drilling into different tabs. And then if you actually have multiple requirements coming in, you can still portray it in a BPMN flow. Because if there's like I got to check this flag from a legal perspective, I got to make sure the user, if X, Y, and Z, right? All of those things can be portrayed. But when all things fail and you want something quick, throw a spreadsheet, do some metrics and say, what's the level of complexity? What's the value that it brings me? What is the risk associated with it? What's the growth rate? Would it actually bring me, because sometimes we look at a feature that brings you no money, but it brings you so many customers, and it can actually be a MarTech, right, feature within your whole scope, that it can actually be the highest value, because maybe that's what you need, referrals.
So we only have a couple more minutes left. I would like to pause here and just give you the floor, Tiana, to do a little introduction of yourself. We've covered some topics already. So we've kind of covered switching from feature focus to outcome focus, making different prioritization and trade-off decisions, the difference of a product manager role at a big company versus small company. So if you want to kind of pick any of those topics and share some nuggets of wisdom, we'd love to hear from you.
So a little bit of my background. So I started at eBay during eBay's hyper growth from fairly small post-IPO, but fairly small company into a huge enterprise. And then after eBay, tried a startup that was a biometric payments, then went back to PayPal for many, many years. So I've had experience in small as well as big environments. And now I'm at Dragonboat as a VP of product. And what really attracted me to Dragonboat, and from my experience as a product manager, going back to the old world of as a product manager, you really want to focus on what are the requests, how do you prioritize them, how do you collaborate with everybody, engineering and UI testing and designers, and come up with the best products. You don't want to spend most of your time on communicating to the rest of the org on what you're doing, or trying to get their buy-in on why you're doing something. A lot of our energy is spent on convincing other people why your product deserves to be in their spot, or deserves to get some of the resources from the development. So now, these days, there are so many tools to help you automate that. And, with a little bit of time and investment spent into enabling, your work. We all have to work in Jira. We all have to work in certain environments, but going beyond that and setting up your world so that you can minimize the noise and minimize the manual spreadsheets and presentations and updates, and justifying why you're doing what you're doing, but also having visibility into understanding what other parts of your company are working on and why, right? Looking at the full platform across all of it really helps focus on the right things and build the expertise and the in-person connections with the right people across your company that you need. So sorry, that was a 2-minute version of.
You summarized it well, touched on all the key points. Swati has a follow-up to that. So how do you minimize it?
So this is why I joined Dragonboat. And, there are, depending on your needs, if you're, most of us work in Jira and we'll have to, that's the reality of life.
I think that's the future of it. Like whatever happened to Rally and Caliber.
There will be, a tool like that you absolutely have to be part of, and most of us are with Jira. But, to me, looking at Dragonboat as a tool to leverage what you're already doing in Jira and import it and marry it with a much bigger picture. So you can still work on your roadmap, on your priorities, update, if there are shifts in strategy or escalations, or whatever's going on, you can do that in Jira or in Dragonboat, but you can use tools like Dragonboat to really enhance that visibility to the rest of your org across different platforms, to your management, to your stakeholders, to whoever is sending in requests, can see where those requests are. And you can then use that time for all the other important things that product managers need to do and focus on.
Yeah, I think I personally, Dragonboat has been my go-to, even though Jira has it, and there are a lot of other tools out there. Dragonboat is my go-to to see overall progress on a product by a fixed version, by a stage, and overall. Like I have a portfolio of products. And, sometimes it's really hard because the way I've done it is I've said, okay, a fixed version doesn't care which product is going in. It cares about the amount of features that are your minimum sellable product or your minimum viable, as people will call it. And so I draw a line, and maybe a fixed version of 0.2 only has a sprint worth of work with 2 components, and we throw them out in prod, and there it went. But that one set of components that we just threw out, that widget or that function, is actually a part of the alpha or the beta of something else under a product suite. And when I'm in Dragonboat, that's how I see it. And I like to see when, the automation from Jira, the guys completes the sprint, right? And everything is going done, 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 done. And I get that one notification that says, phase has changed for your epic, right? And so now I know I'm meeting my objective of penetrating the market and growing my customer base.
And that's how we can get you out of your spreadsheets.
Oh, okay. To be completely fair, I had to share my spreadsheet with Becky because I was like, years ago, Becky, I have this spreadsheet and here's how I do things. So Becky pulled me out of the spreadsheet. It is very true.
I love it.
Yes.
So thank you guys for going over. If you have a couple more minutes, I'd love to just continue. We're getting some questions from the audience, and now we've got the full speaker lineup here. So do you have a few more minutes to continue the conversation?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, awesome. So Vinay just threw into the chat, what's the typical hierarchy you prefer? He said portfolio, initiative, epic, US.
So I either can take that or one of you can take it. I know that everybody has like different ideas on how they want to do things. So it varies.
Let's hear from all you guys. How do you kind of think about your hierarchy?
Okay, so from my perspective, because I'm owning portfolios, it depends on the day of the week. So during the beginning of the week, I have to see it at a portfolio level because that's when I get my status. That's when I get, if it's the beginning of the sprint, the end of the sprint, and right before the beginning of one, I also take a look at it at a portfolio level in case I missed out on something huge that I need to squeeze in. From the perspective of by initiative is because I'm speaking with a stakeholder and somebody brought something up that I'm not sure it was included. So I have to go down to the initiative level.
Okay, I can go next. Yeah, so it depends on what you're looking at, right? So different portfolios will be doing work for different initiatives, high-level initiatives. And then under that, depending on, what level of detail you're trying to get to, you can then look at your epics and your stories. But, the nice thing is everything can roll up to the top initiatives and the top OKRs and see how it affects different portfolios and different roadmaps.
For me, I'd say that I've seen variances between large and small companies, which is a topic we touched on before. Obviously, as a small organization, you may not have a whole lot of portfolios or initiatives. And so the hierarchy must be pretty simple to juggle and manage. User story, epic, initiative, portfolio, I've seen quite common. But also the other way around with initiatives that touch multiple portfolios in larger or medium-sized organizations, right? You have an initiative that touches a bunch of different pieces and components of the business, right? And so they could be the parent over the portfolio. So I think ultimately, though, that particular view, how product views the work, is something that the entire organization needs to align on as well in order for product folks to be effective. So whichever hierarchy you do choose and promote, I think alignment is incredibly important in order to be effective.
Do you have any advice for how to create that alignment and be more effective?
Yeah, I learned a long time ago that agreement is less preferable than alignment, because even if you don't have agreement, if you have alignment, you can move forward. And I think ultimately the way that I work is I like to see the work as a thing that is separate from me, that all of my partners weigh in on and contribute to and refine and make better as it works through its process. And as you know, as you engage with various stakeholders with concerns about, you know, whatever the problem might be, they need to feel empowered that they can affect and nudge the alignment and change the trajectory with their feedback. And sometimes they can, and sometimes they won't be able to. But having that open channel communications and that honesty, it really goes a long way into creating alignment.
Personally, I've had multiple personalities to deal with, and I myself am not easy. So going through that route, it's been where if I know that somebody's giving me a lot of pushback, one of the things I do is create a one-on-one to see what the concern is. If you see yourself, like Raz was saying, as a service provider, then you're actually helping and counseling your team. You have to put that hat on thinking you're like the glue that brings everybody together, and that makes a lot of things happen. You can't see it as I'm going to gain personal, anything, you don't expect to be recognized. You don't expect to say, oh my gosh, my page is on, my face is on the news because I released this product. No, you're a service provider to others, and as a team, you make this happen. And when you approach it that way, you can get through agreements more than alignments a lot faster. In agreements, if you ask the other person what is the concern in a one-on-one, more than likely, you will know that that area that they're covering has a lot of risk, accountability, and it helps you value the priorities a lot better. And then at the same time, you can actually grow yourself in that picture of the elephant, because they're only seeing the leg. They're seeing the leg is hurt. You're seeing the whole body. They don't know the tail just got caught off and the guy is not balanced, right? So you can give them that perspective and say, hey, the tail's kind of having issues right now. So we'll come back to the leg right after the tail's fixed, you see? And then when you do that, you actually get alignment. Now, there are difficult personalities that you may never just go across, and that's okay too. You just have to say, okay, well, this is why your leg is going to have to wait, because the infection on the tail is greater, right? And that's just it. And you're just going to have to live with it. And if you have issues with it, then go up my chain of command, be very military proactive, and just be like, with all due respect, sir. And that's it.
And that's, to that point, that's why I love that there are tools today, right? To put all that in one place, make it as accessible and visible as possible. So you're not making decisions. In our world, there are a lot of passionate people. And you're not making decisions based on who's the loudest in the room, right? You have tools.
Or the highest paid, or the...
Exactly.
There's a great...
You have
for
tools
sure
to put it together and look at the impact of whatever change you're talking about, that it has on all the portfolios. You know, is everybody meeting their OKRs? Things that we talked about in the beginning. Is that happening? Do we need to adjust based on that? It's not based on opinions. It's based on solid data and facts, so that you can build a relationship and not focus on how do I get through to this person.
Yeah.
So true.
Wonderful. Well, we really appreciate you guys taking the extra few minutes. Really glad that you could join Tiana for the end. It was great to have you here. Great conversation around product management, how it's kind of shifted, evolved, and what we should be looking forward to going into the future. And love all the analogies, Dalia. I've got some really infected elephant in my head.
Yes, forevermore. And then you can see happy elephant kind of jumping around and having kids. And that's when your product portfolio grew.
There we go. I love it. The elephant's friends with the chicken and they're on a boat.
See,
Let's
we
do
all
it.
have an animal. I'm just saying.
Perfect.
Brought it home. I love it.
This time
Love
it's
it.
Dragonboat, yeah.
Thank you all for joining. Thanks for the great conversation. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.